My mother didn't even look at me when she said it. She's basically irrelevant. The word slipped out between sips of wine, and everyone laughed like it was just another family joke. My brother smirked. My dad stared down at his plate. But across from me, my future sister-in-law froze her phone lighting up under the table as she quietly typed my name into Google. I watched the color drain from her face as the truth hit her. What they didn't know was, it wouldn't just expose me. Before I go on, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been dismissed, underestimated, or treated like the background in your own family. Trust me, what happened after Jenna looked up? My name is something none of us were prepared for. If you walked into our house when I was a kid, you'd think we were the kind of family that belonged inside a holiday commercial white brick home outside Austin-trimmed lawn porch lights glowing like a promise. My mother, Marilyn, curated everything: the decor, the smiles, the narrative. But perfection has a sound, a quiet, suffocating hum. I grew up inside it. The hallway was the first place I learned my place. Dozens of photos lined the walls. Logan holding trophies. Logan in uniforms. Logan at ceremonies. His face everywhere. Mine nowhere. I'd stand there sometimes, 14 and hopeful Coco, warming my hands, staring at a family album I'd somehow been edited out of. I swallowed the sting. I always did. I didn't know it then, but that hallway would become the blueprint for everything that followed. When I was 8, I wrote a story about a girl who could hear lies. My teacher wrote exceptional imagination in red ink. I ran home with the paper like it was a prize. Marilyn didn't look at it. She was tying Logan's cleats. That's nice, honey. Leave it on the counter. 3 days later, my story was under junk mail, a brown coffee ring stamped over my name. That stain stayed with me longer than the grade. At 14, I won a writing contest. A small trophy shaped like a flame, cheap plastic, but it felt huge in my hands. Don't clutter the counters, my mother said, already turning away. 2 days later, I found it in a box in the basement, half buried under Christmas decorations. Logan's trophies gleamed on the mantel. I told myself it didn't matter, but every dismissal carved a quiet hollow in me that would echo for years. Then came 16, the year something inside me finally reached for air. I wrote my first real manuscript. Long afternoons in the backyard, cicadas humming like static Texas heat pressing against my skin. The story poured out of me, raw, urgent, alive. I printed the first chapters, slid them into a blue folder, and mailed them to a national competition. For the first time, I felt certain that I mattered, that my words mattered. Weeks passed. Silence. Months passed. More silence. When I finally asked my mother if the mail could have been lost, she didn't look up from her magazine. Not everyone wins, Avery. Don't be dramatic. I laughed like it didn't hurt. But something splintered quietly inside me. A hairline crack I wouldn't understand until years later, sitting at a dinner table watching Jenna's face go pale as truth finally clawed its way back into the light. New York became my escape hatch before I even knew what I was escaping from. The morning after graduation, I packed 2 suitcases, a cheap laptop, and the smallest bit of courage I'd ever carried. Marilyn called it running away. My father hugged me like he wasn't sure if he deserved to. Logan didn't bother coming downstairs. My dorm in Manhattan was tiny, loud, and unbearably alive. Someone on my floor played guitar off-key every night. The radiator hissed like it had secrets. But in that cramped space, for the first time, I could hear my own thoughts without my mother's voice drowning them out. That's where I met Professor Margaret Reed. Red glasses, silver bun, sharp mind. She read one page of my writing, set it down, and looked at me with a steadiness I wasn't used to. "There's a real voice here," she said. "Don't let anyone smother it." I didn't cry in her office, but I almost did in the hallway. The years that followed were a blur of exhaustion and tiny breakthroughs. A wobbly Craigslist desk, midnight writing sessions after bookstore shifts, cheap coffee, rejection emails that stung harder than they should have. But then one story got published, then another. Then an agent reached out. And then somehow, a book deal. When my first novel came out, I mailed 2 signed copies to my parents' house with a note tucked inside. "In case you ever want to know what I've been doing all these years, Avery." Months later, on a visit home, I found the package, unopened, stuffed behind scarves in the hall closet, as if my existence was seasonal. I swallowed the hurt, but it didn't disappear this time. It calcified. Back in New York, my world expanded: panels, interviews, emails from strangers whose lives my words had touched. Yet every success echoed against a memory: the blue folder I mailed at 16, the silence that followed, and a feeling I could never quite name. I didn't know it then, but that missing manuscript wasn't gone. It had simply taken a detour through the hands of someone I trusted, someone sitting across from me, years later, at a polished Thanksgiving table, pretending none of it ever happened. And the night Jenna typed my name into Google, the past finally clawed its way back to the surface. By 30, I had 2 books on shelves across the country. In Brooklyn, strangers lined up for my signings. In Texas, I was still the daughter who never called enough. Nothing I did in New York Panels Awards deadlines mattered in the Blake household unless it could be compared to Logan. Spoiler: nothing ever measured up. So when Marilyn called that November, her voice bubbling with practiced excitement, I already knew the script. "We're hosting Thanksgiving. Logan wants to introduce Jenna properly. You need to be here." It wasn't an invitation. It was a command wrapped in a smile. "I'm on a deadline," I said. "You can write on the plane," she replied. "Family comes first." Family. Funny how that word only seemed to include 3 people. Still, I went. A part of me wanted to see if Jenna, this woman Logan planned to marry, was anything like the rest of them. The house looked exactly the same when I pulled up: white bricks, glowing wreath, perfectly centered porch, spotless. Nothing ever changed in that house except the expectations. Marilyn opened the door before I knocked. "You look thin," she said. "New York must be exhausting." Logan's inside. He's had an incredible year. Inside, Logan held court like usual, surrounded by people nodding at every word. He spotted me and grinned. "Avery, how's book stuff? Good," I said. "That's cute," he replied, and turned back to bragging about his Dallas expansion. Then I met Jenna: warm, smile, bright eyes, the kind of woman who seemed soft at first glance, but carried steel underneath. We talked briefly, and in 30 seconds I realized something important. She wasn't oblivious. She watched everything. Throughout the afternoon, I saw her observing the family dynamic the way a journalist dissects body language. She noticed how Marilyn interrupted me before I finished a sentence, how Logan dismissed my comments with a laugh, how my dad looked away whenever the conversation got uncomfortable. During appetizers, one of Logan's friends asked, "So Avery, what do you do in New York?" Before I could answer, Marilyn jumped in. "She writes or edits or something creative." Anyway, Logan just opened his 4th gym. Jenna's eyes flicked to me. A quiet question there. "Is this normal?" In the hallway, she paused at the photo wall. Logan's face smiled back at her from every frame. She didn't ask why mine wasn't there. She didn't need to. Setting the table later, my journal slipped from my bag and hit the floor. Logan swooped in, grabbed it, flipped a page, his face drained. "Give it back," I said. He shut it fast, voice tight. "Relax, it's just a notebook." But Jenna saw his reaction, and that was the moment something in her intuition snapped awake. By the time dinner was served, the air already felt charged, like the house itself knew a storm was building. Jenna watched every interaction now, not with confusion, but with clarity. She wasn't just noticing the imbalance. She was starting to understand it, and she had no idea how deep it went. Dinner should have been peaceful, but in my family, peace was just stage lighting for the next bruise. The turkey hadn't even cooled before Logan launched into another story about his business empire, Marilyn nodding along like a hype woman in pearls. My dad kept giving me these quiet, guilty glances, the kind you give someone you're afraid to talk to. Jenna didn't touch her food. She watched us. Every interruption, every dismissal. Every time my mother answered a question meant for me. Then came the moment everything shifted, so small, so harmless on the surface. Someone asked if Logan and Jenna were taking engagement photos. Marilyn beamed. "Oh, absolutely. Logan photographs beautifully. His face belongs in a frame." Jenna blinked. "What about Avery?" The entire table stilled, forks suspended, breaths held. Marilyn's smile thinned. "Oh, we've never done professional photos of her. She's always busy." Jenna tilted her head. "Busy doing what New York things," Marilyn said quickly. "She chose that life." Logan stayed close. "That's why he's the dependable one." Logan smirked like it was a compliment. "And Avery isn't dependable." Jenna pushed, voice soft but edged. The temperature in the room dropped. Marilyn set down her wine. "Let's not twist words. Avery is sensitive." If you indulge that too much, it grows. There it was. Sensitive. My lifelong label. A glass box they kept me in so no one had to hear me crack. I felt my throat tighten, but years of conditioning kept my face still. Jenna's didn't stay still. Her confusion finally turned into something sharper concern, maybe even anger. She looked straight at me. Avery, what do you actually do in New York? Before I could answer, Marilyn cut in again, quicker this time, desperate. She edits something for a small, unstable creative place. Nothing serious. I set my fork down. That's not accurate. Logan laughed. Don't get technical, Av. It's cute. My stomach twisted not at the insult, but because I saw the exact moment Jenna realized this wasn't a family quirk. It was a system. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down and froze. Her thumbs moved. She typed my name. Avery Blake. She whispered. Blue light flickered across her face as she scrolled faster, slower, then stopped altogether. What are you doing? Marilyn asked. Jenna didn't answer at first. When she did, her voice was steady. Has any of you ever Googled her? Marilyn scoffed. Why would we do that? To know her, Jenna said. Logan waved a hand. She's sitting right here. But he didn't finish because Jenna slowly turned her screen around. And there it was. My author photo. My book covers. Awards. Press quotes. Film adaptation announcement. Marilyn inhaled so sharply the candle flames trembled. Avery, what is this Jenna wasn't done? Her finger tapped another tab, a blog she'd opened without meaning to. A headline appeared. Logan Blake's 2008 scholarship was it plagiarized. The color drained from her face. She whispered, this story. It matches Avery's missing manuscript. A fork dropped, a chair creaked, the air imploded. And for the first time in my life, I watched my family freeze, not because I had disappeared, but because the truth finally refused to. The room didn't explode. It fractured. Sharp, quiet cracks spreading through the air like the house itself finally realized it had been built on lies. Jenna's whisper hovered over the table. This story. It matches Avery's missing manuscript. No one moved. No one breathed. Logan broke first. Jenna, stop. You don't know what you're reading. His voice wasn't confident anymore. It trembled like he was trying to outrun something that had already caught him. Marilyn snatched the phone from Jenna's hand. The screen lit her face in harsh blue, revealing every twitch in her jaw, every flicker of panic. This is nonsense, she said. Some blogger trying to stir trouble. People exaggerate online. Jenna didn't blink. They copied whole paragraphs, Marilyn. Word for word. Exactly what Avery said she lost at 16. My father reached across the table, palms trembling as he pulled the phone toward him. He adjusted his glasses slowly, too slowly, like delaying the truth might change it. He began reading aloud. Voice cracking. Anonymous source claims winner used his sister's manuscript. Identical opening. Identical plot. He looked up. His face had collapsed. Logan, he whispered. Tell me this isn't true. Logan shoved back from the table so violently his chair screeched across the floor. I did it for her, he blurted out. She was too scared to submit it herself. I helped. I made it better. She never would have done anything with it. The words hit me harder than the admission. He really believed that. He really believed I was the reason he stole from me. That was my story, I said quietly. My name. My work. No, Logan snapped, pointing a shaking finger at me. You freeze under pressure. You never finish anything. You write sad little stories and hope someone cares. I did something real with it. Jenna stared at him like she'd never seen him before. You took her future, she said softly, and you celebrated it. Marilyn stood abruptly. The candles flickered from the movement. We are not rehashing something from over a decade ago, she barked. He needed that scholarship. He worked for it. So did she, Jenna said. Those 3 words cut cleaner than anything I'd ever been brave enough to say. My mother's face twisted. She's being dramatic, sensitive as always. If she wanted credit, she should have said something. I did, I said. My voice was steady, but it felt like the whole table leaned into it. You just never listened. Not once. Silence bled into the room, heavy, suffocating. My father looked broken. We failed you. He murmured, eyes shining with a sorrow 20 years too late. But I wasn't looking for guilt, or apologies, or anything that resembled the love I kept trying to earn. Logan's voice cracked. Av, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't think you'd ever, your books. He gestured helplessly as if the proof of who I'd become somehow confused him. It was almost funny. Almost. I stood pushing my chair back slowly. The scrape echoed across the table like the closing line of a story they never bothered to read. You didn't need to hurt me to love him, I said. But you did. All of you did. No one spoke. No one followed as I picked up my bag. The candles flickered one last time as I walked out, like the house exhaled the truth it had been forced to swallow for years. When the door closed behind me, it wasn't a slam. It was a clean final ending, and the start of something they were absolutely not prepared for. The cold Austin air hit me the moment I stepped outside, sharp enough to feel like honesty. Behind me, the Blake house glowed warm and perfect, like nothing inside had cracked, like the truth hadn't just gutted an entire family. It looked the same as it always had. I didn't. I walked down the driveway, slowly, gravel crunching under my boots. Every breath came out in pale clouds. Oddly enough, I didn't feel angry. I felt awake, like someone had wiped the fog from a mirror I'd been staring into for years. My phone buzzed. Jenna. I'm so sorry. Are you okay, safe? Okay. Words that never belonged to that house. But now I felt both. I'm fine, I typed. Just done pretending. Her reply came fast. You deserve better than any of that. If you ever need someone, really need someone, I'm here. This time, I believed her. 2 days later, back in Brooklyn, I unpacked my suitcase, clothes, chargers, my journal, and then folded neatly between sweaters something I hadn't packed, a printed screenshot. Jenna had slipped it into my bag. The blog post about Logan's scholarship scandal, entire paragraphs highlighted, circles around phrases identical to my missing manuscript. At the bottom, her handwriting, you decide what happens next. I sat on my couch, the hum of the city drifting through the window sirens, distant music, someone laughing upstairs. New York sounded like possibility again. I opened my journal, notes, dates, offhand comments, patterns of dismissal I'd recorded over the years, not as weapons, but as proof that I wasn't imagining any of it. Looking at them now, they didn't feel like wounds. They felt like material. My family had spent decades pretending my voice didn't matter. Ironically, they just handed me the strongest story I'd ever held. Maybe I wouldn't expose them. Maybe I would. The real power was finally mine. And revenge. Sometimes it starts with a blank page and the decision not to stay silent anymore. If you've ever been the outsider in your own family, if you've ever felt small while everyone else took up the room, hit subscribe. Stories like mine aren't just drama. They're reminders that your voice matters even when the people closest to you pretend not to hear it. Tell me in the comments if you've lived a moment like this. I read every single one. And trust me, this story isn't finished. Not for me, and maybe not for you either.